March 15th, 2023. Marcus Williams stood in the ICU watching his 97-year-old trainer whisper Mike Tyson's name through oxygen tubes. Papa Joe had been like a father to him for 40 years. That's exactly why what happened next shattered everything Marcus thought he knew about his life. The old man grabbed Marcus's wrist with surprising strength. His eyes cleared for the first time in months, and he said 5 words that made Marcus's blood run cold. "I made you throw that fight." The championship bout in 1987, the one that destroyed Marcus's career, the one he threw to save his dying daughter. Papa Joe knew. Papa Joe had orchestrated it. And now, with death approaching, the old man wanted to meet Mike Tyson to confess something that would rewrite boxing history. Something about a fixed fight that was never really fixed. Something about a daughter who was never really dying. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus's legs gave out. He grabbed the plastic hospital chair, his knuckles white against the beige armrest as Papa Joe's words echoed in the sterile room. "I made you throw that fight." The heart monitor's steady beeping suddenly sounded like a countdown timer. "What did you say?" Marcus's voice came out as a croak. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Papa Joe's weathered face. The old man's grip on Marcus's wrist tightened, his yellowed fingernails digging into skin. "Sophia wasn't..." Papa Joe's voice wheezed through the oxygen mask. His cloudy eyes darted toward the door, then back to Marcus with an urgency that cut through the dementia fog. "She wasn't dying, Marcus. The doctors, they were paid to lie." The room tilted. Marcus felt 35 years of guilt and rage colliding in his chest like freight trains. Sophia, his little girl, 7 years old with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, supposedly wasting away from leukemia while he bled his soul dry in training camps, preparing for the biggest fight of his life. The fight he threw in the 8th round against Tommy the Tornado Martinez, the fight that should have made him champion. "You're confused, old man." But even as Marcus said it, his mind was racing backward, connecting dots he'd never wanted to see. The mysterious benefactor who'd paid for Sophia's treatment. The way his ex-wife Rachel had suddenly become distant after the fight. The fact that Sophia had made a miraculous recovery right after he'd lost his shot at the title. Papa Joe's breathing grew labored. He pulled the oxygen mask aside with a shaking hand. "The men, they came to me first, before the fight, said they needed insurance. Said if you wouldn't take the money..." His voice trailed off, but his eyes finished the sentence. Marcus jerked his wrist free and stepped back, his massive frame trembling. If I wouldn't take the money, what? They'd hurt her for real? A nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Visiting hours end in 10 minutes. We need more time," Marcus said without turning around. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Torino needs his rest." "GET out." The words exploded from Marcus's chest. 40 years of suppressed fury finally finding a target. The nurse backed away, her face pale. Papa Joe tried to sit up, his frail body fighting against the tubes and wires. "Marcus, listen, the confession. Tyson knows things. About that night. About who really called the shots." His voice was fading, but his words hit like body shots. "There's a recording of the real conversation, the one where they planned it all." "What recording?" "Hidden in the gym. Behind the..." Papa Joe's eyes rolled back, his body going limp against the pillows. The heart monitor's rhythm spiked, then flattened into a continuous tone. Alarms began blaring. Medical staff rushed past Marcus, pushing him aside as they worked to stabilize the old man. Someone was calling for a crash cart. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, watching the chaos unfold. In his mind, he was back in that Philadelphia gym in 1987, young and hungry, with Papa Joe shouting instructions from the corner. "Keep your guard up, Thunder. Champions don't drop their hands." The irony tasted like blood in his mouth now. "Sir, you need to step outside," a doctor said, placing a firm hand on Marcus's shoulder. But Marcus wasn't really there anymore. He was remembering the night before the Martinez fight, how Papa Joe had seemed nervous, checking his watch constantly, how he'd insisted they leave the gym early, how he'd hugged Marcus longer than usual and told him he loved him like a son. The machines stabilized. Papa Joe's breathing resumed its shallow rhythm, but he was unconscious now, lost again in whatever damaged landscape his mind had become. Marcus stumbled into the hallway, his phone buzzing with missed calls from the gym. Thursday night meant amateur fighters would be waiting for him to lock up, life continuing as normal while his world collapsed in slow motion. He slumped against the wall outside Papa Joe's room and closed his eyes. For 35 years he'd carried the weight of that decision. The shame of being the fighter who threw away everything for money. The title shots that never came after. The whispers that followed him everywhere. There goes Thunder Williams, the could-have-been champion. His daughter Sophia was 32 now, married with kids of her own, living in California. They'd barely spoken since Rachel died 5 years ago. Another casualty of the lie he'd apparently been living his entire adult life. Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end made his blood freeze. "Mr. Williams? This is about your trainer's recent awakening. We understand he's been talking about old times. We'd like to have a conversation with you about keeping the past where it belongs." The line went dead. Through the ICU window, Marcus could see Papa Joe's still form surrounded by machines. Somewhere in Las Vegas, Mike Tyson was probably training, completely unaware that he held the key to a secret that men were apparently still willing to kill for. Marcus sat in his truck outside the hospital for 20 minutes, staring at his phone. The anonymous caller's words replayed in his head. "We'd like to have a conversation with you about keeping the past where it belongs." His hands hadn't stopped shaking since he'd left Papa Joe's room. The drive back to South Philadelphia felt like moving through water. Every red light, every turn, gave him more time to think, and thinking was the last thing he needed right now. The city looked different somehow, as if someone had adjusted the contrast. The familiar streets of his childhood seemed sharper, more threatening. Even the potholes felt personal. Thunder Williams' boxing gym sat wedged between a check-cashing place and a Chinese takeout joint on Passyunk Avenue. The neon sign flickered erratically, casting intermittent shadows across the cracked sidewalk. Marcus had bought the place 15 years ago with what was left of his fight earnings, back when he still believed he could build something meaningful from the wreckage of his career. Inside, the smell of old sweat and leather hung in the air like incense. The heavy bag swayed slightly in the draft from the broken heating system. 3 fighters were still working out, Danny Reeves shadowboxing in the ring, Rosa Martinez working the speed bag with surgical precision, and old Frank DeLuca holding mitts for his nephew Tony. They looked up when Marcus entered, their faces showing concern. "You okay, boss?" Danny called out, lowering his gloves. "You look like you seen a ghost." Marcus forced a smile. "Just tired. Long day at the hospital." He walked to his office, a cramped space behind the main gym floor that smelled of coffee grounds and disappointment. Through the window, he could see his fighters going through their routines. The same movements he'd drilled into them, the same combinations Papa Joe had once drilled into him. The office walls were covered with faded photographs. Marcus as a young heavyweight, muscles rippling under gym lights. His first professional win in Atlantic City. The contract signing for the Martinez fight that was supposed to change everything. And there, in a small frame on his desk, a picture of 7-year-old Sophia sitting on his shoulders after a sparring session, both of them grinning at the camera. She wasn't dying, Marcus. He picked up the photo, studying his daughter's face. She'd been so small then, so fragile looking. When the doctors had delivered the diagnosis, Marcus had felt something break inside his chest. Leukemia at 7 years old. The treatments would cost hundreds of thousands. His insurance wouldn't cover half of it. Then the mysterious benefactor had appeared through Papa Joe's connections, someone willing to pay for everything in exchange for a simple favor. Throw one fight, lose in the 8th round, walk away with enough money to save his little girl's life. It hadn't even felt like a choice. Marcus opened his desk drawer and pulled out a bottle of bourbon he kept for the worst days. This definitely qualified. The first sip burned, but the second went down easier. Through the office window, he watched Rosa work the speed bag. She reminded him of himself at that age, hungry, desperate to prove something. She had 2 kids at home, worked double shifts at a diner to pay for gym time. What would he do if someone told him Rosa's daughter was dying? If they offered him a choice between her life and Rosa's boxing dreams, he'd make the same decision. Every time. The gym phone rang, startling him. Marcus let it go to voicemail, but the silence that followed felt ominous. His cell phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Nice gym. Would hate to see anything happen to it. Marcus's blood went cold. Through the window, he could see a dark sedan parked across the street that hadn't been there when he'd arrived. The windows were tinted, but he could make out two figures in the front seat. "Frank," he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "Why don't you and Tony call it a night?" Frank looked surprised. "It's only 9:30, boss. Early day tomorrow." Marcus forced another smile. "Rosa, Danny, you too. Lock up when you're done." Rosa stopped hitting the speed bag. "Marcus, what's going on?" "Nothing. Just need some time to think." After the fighters left, Marcus turned off most of the lights and sat alone in the darkness. The gym felt different without the sound of training, hollow, vulnerable. He thought about Sophia in California, probably putting her own kids to bed right now. She had no idea that her childhood illness had been a lie, that her father's disgrace had been orchestrated to save a life that was never actually in danger. The bourbon was half gone when Marcus finally stood up. Papa Joe had mentioned something about a recording hidden in the gym. If there was evidence of what really happened that night, he needed to find it before someone else did. But first, he needed to make a phone call. Mike Tyson's people wouldn't be easy to reach, but Marcus had to try. If Papa Joe's dying wish was going to expose 35 years of secrets, Marcus wanted to control how that story got told. Outside, the dark sedan remained parked across the street, waiting. Marcus moved to the back window of his office, staying in the shadows as he dialed information. The bourbon had steadied his hands, but his heart still hammered against his ribs. Getting to Mike Tyson would require calling in favors he'd been saving for decades. "Bobby? It's Marcus Williams." He kept his voice low, glancing toward the street. "Yeah, Thunder Williams. Listen, I need a number." Bobby Castellano had been a fight promoter back in the day, the kind of man who knew everyone and owed everyone. Marcus had saved Bobby's son from a beating outside a Atlantic City casino 15 years ago, and Bobby had promised to return the favor someday. Mike Tyson's people. Jesus, Marcus, what kind of trouble you in? Bobby's gravelly voice carried through the phone like sandpaper. "Never mind, I don't want to know. Give me 20 minutes. Marcus hung up and walked back into the main gym, searching the walls and equipment with new eyes. Papa Joe had said there was a recording hidden somewhere. Behind what? The old man's words had been cut short by the medical emergency, leaving Marcus with nothing but fragments and fear. He started with the office, running his hands behind picture frames and along the baseboards. Nothing. The filing cabinets yielded only old contracts and medical forms. Frustrated, he moved into the main gym area, checking behind the heavy bags, under the ring apron, inside the equipment lockers. His phone rang. "Bobby. Got your number, but Marcus, these people, they don't just chat. You better have a damn good reason to call." Bobby rattled off a phone number. "Ask for Monica Vasquez. Tell her Bobby C sent you, and whatever you do, don't waste her time." Marcus memorized the number, then immediately dialed. The phone rang twice before a crisp female voice answered. "Vasquez, Miss Vasquez. My name is Marcus Williams. Bobby Castellano said you might be able to help me reach Mike Tyson. It's about Giuseppe Torino." A pause. Giuseppe Torino. Now that's a name I haven't heard in a while. Her tone shifted, became more interested. "What's your connection to Papa Joe? He was my trainer. He's dying, and he has some information about the 1987 Martinez fight. Information Mike might want to hear." Another pause, longer this time. Marcus could hear typing in the background. "Marcus Thunder Williams. Heavyweight contender until you took a dive against Tommy Martinez." Her voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. "What makes you think Mike cares about ancient history?" "Because Papa Joe says Mike already knows about it. Says there's evidence of who really orchestrated the whole thing." The typing stopped. "Mr. Williams, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Some stories are better left buried, but if you insist on digging them up, be prepared for what you might find." She paused. "Mike's in Vegas, training at the Holyfield facility. I'll make a call. If he wants to see you, someone will contact you within 24 hours. The line went dead. Marcus stood in the center of his empty gym, surrounded by 30 years of modest dreams and small victories. Whatever Papa Joe had set in motion was bigger than an old man's dying wish. The recording, Tyson's alleged knowledge, the threats, it all pointed to something that went deeper than a fixed fight. A sound from the back of the gym made him freeze, a soft scraping, like metal against concrete. Marcus killed the lights and moved silently toward the sound, his old boxer's instincts taking over. The rear exit was supposed to be locked, but as he approached, he could see it was slightly ajar. Someone was inside. Marcus grabbed a baseball bat from behind the front desk and crept forward. The scraping sound came again, from the area behind the old heavy bag that Papa Joe had installed when they first opened the gym. Marcus had always wondered why Joe insisted on hanging that particular bag in such an awkward corner. A flashlight beam danced across the wall as Marcus rounded the corner. A man in a dark jacket was crouched behind the heavy bag, prying at something in the wall with a crowbar. He looked up as Marcus appeared, his face partially hidden by a ski mask. Looking for something? Marcus raised the bat. The intruder straightened, revealing he was bigger than Marcus had initially thought. "Mr. Williams, we tried to do this the easy way." His voice was calm, professional. Papa Joe had 35 years to keep his mouth shut. Now you're going to learn why he should have stayed quiet. The man lunged forward with the crowbar. Marcus swung the bat, catching him across the shoulder and sending him stumbling into the wall. Behind the loose panel where the intruder had been working, Marcus glimpsed the edge of something metallic, a small recording device, just like Papa Joe had promised. But before he could reach it, two more figures emerged from the shadows near the ring. The setup had been perfect. They'd waited for him to clear out the gym, then moved in to find what Papa Joe had hidden decades ago. Marcus realized with cold certainty that his old life was over. Whatever was on that recording, people were willing to kill for it, and he was about to find out why. The first man came at Marcus with the crowbar again, but Marcus had fought professionally for 15 years. Muscle memory kicked in even at 68. He ducked left, brought the bat up in a tight arc, and caught the intruder square in the ribs. The man dropped, gasping. "Stay down," Marcus growled, but his eyes were on the other two figures circling the ring. They moved like professionals, spreading out to flank him. These weren't street thugs looking for easy money. These were people who knew what they were doing. "Mr. Williams," the taller one called out, his voice carrying a slight accent Marcus couldn't place. "We're not here to hurt you. We just need what belongs to our employer." "Don't know what you're talking about." Marcus backed toward the recording device, keeping the bat ready. "Papa Joe was supposed to die with his secrets. Now he's got you involved in something that doesn't concern you." The man stepped into the light, revealing a scarred face and dead eyes. "Walk away. Pretend this never happened." Marcus thought about Papa Joe lying in that hospital bed, machines keeping him alive while his mind slipped further into darkness. The old man who'd raised him, taught him everything about boxing and life. The same man who'd apparently orchestrated the destruction of his career. "Can't do that." The scarred man sighed. "Then you're as stubborn as he was." They rushed him simultaneously. Marcus swung the bat at the nearest one, connected with his arm, but the second man tackled him around the waist. They went down hard, Marcus's back slamming against the concrete floor. The bat skittered away into the shadows. Hands grabbed at him. Someone threw a punch that caught him in the temple, sending stars across his vision. Marcus rolled left, came up swinging, his old combinations returning like prayers he'd never forgotten. Left hook, right cross. One of the men stumbled backward, but there were too many of them, and Marcus wasn't young anymore. A knee caught him in the stomach, doubling him over. Through the pain, he could hear them working at the wall behind Papa Joe's heavy bag, prying at the loose panel. "Got it," one of them said. Marcus forced himself up, his vision blurry. The scarred man was holding a small digital recorder, turning it over in his hands like it contained nuclear codes. Maybe it did. 35 years Papa Joe kept this hidden, the man said, almost admiringly. Old school, but not smart enough to take it to his grave. What's on it? Marcus wiped blood from his split lip. The truth about your daughter, about what really happened that night in Atlantic City, about who really called the shots. The man's smile was cold, truth that certain people paid a lot of money to keep buried. Marcus felt something collapse inside his chest. Sophia wasn't sick. Oh, she was sick. just not with leukemia. The man pocketed the recorder. Your wife was having an affair, Mr. Williams, with a very married, very powerful man. When she threatened to go public, arrangements had to be made. The words hit Marcus like body shots. Rachel, his ex-wife, who'd grown distant after the fight, who'd taken Sophia and moved to California, who'd barely spoken to him for the last 20 years of her life. Rachel, who died of a real cancer 5 years ago, taking her secrets with her. The medical bills, the treatments, all real, but not for leukemia, for the psychological trauma of what that man did to her. The scarred man headed toward the back exit. Your fight was just the cover story, a way to explain where the money came from without raising questions. Marcus lunged forward, but hands grabbed him from behind, holding him back. Who? He demanded. Who was it? The scarred man paused at the door. You really want to know? Ask yourself why Papa Joe's dying wish was to see Mike Tyson. Ask yourself what Iron Mike has to do with a washed-up heavyweight from Philadelphia. He smiled again. But be careful what you wish for, Mr. Williams. Some truths are heavier than others. They were gone before Marcus could break free, leaving him alone in his destroyed gym. The heavy bag swayed gently, its anchor point in the wall now exposed, a small cavity where Papa Joe had hidden 35 years' worth of explosive secrets. Marcus sank to his knees on the cold concrete, his mind reeling. Everything he'd believed about his life, his sacrifice, his daughter's illness, all of it built on lies within lies. The recording was gone, but Papa Joe was still alive, still the only person who knew the whole truth. Outside, engines started. Car doors slammed. The dark sedan pulled away from the curb, carrying with it the evidence of whatever Papa Joe had really done. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from the same unknown number. This ends here. No Vegas, no Tyson, no more questions. But Marcus was already reaching for his keys. Some fights you couldn't walk away from, even if you knew you were going to lose.